Folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hello, folks, and welcome back once again to Chris Wyatt Africa here on the Indaba Africa channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. It's a pleasure to have you back. Whether you find yourself up there in Nunavut, where it is cold, in fact, in northern Canada, the Northwest Territories, maybe in Ireland, in the Irish Isles, or maybe the British Isles up there in the Orkneys or Scotland, somewhere in Asia, our friends out there in China, Andre Jacobs, are you on the station today? As well as New Zealand, Australia, around the world. Of course, we have plenty of viewers in the UK and South Africa, where a lot of our viewers come from. Welcome to you. Guten Tag, herzlich willkommen bei uns. Heute haben wir einen speziell besonderen Gast und die heißt Manuela Leonhard. Folks, welcome to our guest who is today coming in from Zurich in Switzerland. It's none other than the assistant to the mayor of the city of Zurich, and that's Manuela Leonhard. Manuela, herzlich willkommen bei uns.
Hallo, herzlich willkommen.
Oh boy, it's that sound in the background is there again. Folks, if anyone can hear that, just let me know. We're having a little audio difficulty on her end. It's just some kind of static or something. So my apologies for that. We'll do our best to get through it. But I wanted to get you on to talk about one of the places I find very interesting. And let me take this scarf off. That's an ice hockey scarf from Ingolstadt. It's kind of warm. But the thing is that I want to talk about Zurich because I think it's a fascinating place. A lot of people don't know about it as a tourist destination, and I'm sure you can tell us a lot about it from that standpoint. But I call this program the Indaba Conversation with Chris. And for Manuela and for some folks in the audience who might be new, it is a situation where Indaba is a Kosa and a Zulu word, which means a consultation where you get together and you discuss things and you try to reach decisions or learn about things. And so that's why I call it the Indaba Conversation with Chris. So it's less an interview and more of a conversation, kind of, I don't know if Manuela's old enough to remember this, but David Frost back in the 70s and 80s. But David Frost would have an interview style in which he sat down and had a conversation with his guest. And that's kind of what this is. So let me start off, and maybe the gremlins will go away in the audio, but let me start off by saying that a few years back, I was based in Tunisia, and Air Tunis would fly me to Zurich, and I took Swiss Air to Accra. That was the only way for me to get there at the time. And when I did that, I happened to rock up one time in Zurich. I got to the airport. Because of the flight schedules, you stay overnight and the airline pays for it. So I got to stay in Zurich every night I did. It was pretty cool. So going to Africa, I got to stay in Zurich. So I get to the airport, and of course I speak German, so I'm talking to the driver who takes us to the hotel. And he says, are you going to the fest? I'm like, fest? What fest? He goes, don't you know it's the 1,250th anniversary of the city of Zurich? I'm like, I didn't know that. He said, you should go downtown. It's going to be amazing. So I checked in my hotel. I asked the guy, the portier at the desk, and he said, oh, yeah, it's the fest. You should go. So I took the train into town, and I was like, oh, my goodness. What an incredible fest it was indeed. I imagine you were probably there for that, or at least you're aware of it. Zurich knows how to throw a party. And with that, let me let you get into conversation. Hopefully the gremlins will be away from the audio.
Hi, Chris. Nice to meet you. So how is the sound now?
It's terrible. I don't understand what the problem is. I've never had this particular problem before. And my audience, they can't understand what you're saying. That's really weird.
It's really weird.
Do you have a mobile? Hey, could you try calling?
Yes, I have a mobile.
Maybe if you try calling in your mobile, maybe we try that, okay? Let's see if that works.
All right, let's try that. All right, let me do that.
All right. I'm going to put the audio.
Let me get off here, huh?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. All right, folks, my apologies. We're going to try to sort it out. She's going to try to come back on her mobile. I think it's her laptop. I hope that's the problem because we've never had this problem before. Anyway, so yes, Eric, I know the guest sound is terrible. Thank you. I got your first message. You said incomprehensible. It sounds like gremlins. Indeed, it did sound like gremlins. Very strange. It's not feedback. It's like power shooting through the line. It's probably something running on her laptop that's causing the difficulty. Okay, fingers crossed, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Hopefully she has a stand. She doesn't have to hold her mobile in her hand the whole time. All right, now her mobile's sideways. Are you able to adjust it so it's in landscape?
So now.
Okay, well now we can see you. That's great, but it's that'll be fine. We'll work with that. Okay, cool, excellent. All right, I'm not getting that feedback now.
Can you hear me now?
Ausgezeichnet. Perfect. Not a problem. No feedback. There's something with your laptop. Maybe an application was running in the background and surging power. That might have been it was. My apologies to the viewers. My apologies to Manuela, but I didn't make her laptop. Someone else did. So I was saying that I was there on the 1250th anniversary of the city of Zurich.
All right.
Hello?
Do you remember which year it was?
Gosh, it must have been 2001. I think it was 2001, something like that, around that time frame.
Okay.
It was a
Of course, I've been living. So, but there have been so many parties and so many big fests, so I can't remember any particular anymore. Probably that's my problem.
So I guess that begs the question: then, are you a Züricher? Are you from Zurich, or did you move there later in life?
I grew up in East Switzerland, close to Lake Constance, actually, and I moved to Zurich by the age of 19. For what? Because for love. So I got married here very young. I got stuck here in Zurich.
Stuck. Well, I would say there's far worse places to be stuck. So you're from the Bodensee area then?
Yeah, very true. Glad?
What's that? I'm sorry. When I speak, it talks. I cut you out, so I'll have to pause each time. But you said glad, and I didn't hear the rest.
Glad you know Bodensee, and glad you know Switzerland so well.
Oh, I do indeed. I know it very well. The tunnels, the lakes, the mountains, the Italian-speaking portion, the Rhado-Romanche-speaking portion, the German-speaking. And actually, ironically, I have Swiss ancestors. I have an ancestor who came from Switzerland, from the Berner Oberland, and right on the border where they speak French and German. And so depending on who the priest was in the church at the time, sometimes the surname would be spelled in a French fashion, sometimes in a German fashion. So it had a different spelling. But in the late 1760s, I think it was, which is very early, my ancestor, who was a widower, his wife had died. He brought himself and his 5 kids, unbelievable, to the United States, immigrated in the 1760s to the United States and settled in Pennsylvania. And then eventually that line moved into Virginia, and I have ancestry there. So I have Swiss ancestry. I've actually been there. What's the name of the town? Oberau, I think, is the town in Oberbib, which is right next to it. 2 little dwarfs. So fascinating. So I've been all over. The one place I hadn't been, had never been to Geneva or Genf, and I finally got there a number of years ago when I was driving back from France. So I've been all over. I have to say my first time in Switzerland was 1984. Quite a while ago.
Oh, right.
So listen, there's people in the audience probably don't know a whole lot about Switzerland, or other than chocolates and yodeling and and things like that, obviously. But speaking of which, a lot of my viewers are fans of. I don't know if you're familiar. Well, I imagine you're familiar with them, but I don't know if you're a fan. But Euch die Dritten. We have a lot of Euch die Dritten fans in the crowd.
Yeah, they are very famous too here in Switzerland, actually. It's a really nice group, and before COVID, they have been very successful and still been all over the places. They also go international. They're very famous international too, as you say. That's very cool. We have a lot of great musicians here in Switzerland.
Well, actually, Manuela, I have to tell you a little. Well, it's not a secret here. My audience knows it, but I had a program last year, and there's a South African performer who sings in Afrikaans. And I had her on the program. I was talking to her and her husband, who promotes music, and people were asking her to sing. I said, I don't want to put her on the spot and ask her to sing. And she said, no, I'll sing a couple a cappella things. So one of the people in the audience who speaks Afrikaans, which of course is similar to Dutch, but it's not Dutch, tried to write what the name of the group was. And I what is this? And they misspelled it because they were using the Afrikaans pronunciation, not the German pronunciation. And of course, with the umlaut, it just makes it all more complicated. Anyway, so they're writing. I'm like, I don't know. I was telling him, because he couldn't see the screen. I'm like, it says esh, the I don't. He goes, oh, Euch die Dritten. I said, do you mean Euch die Dritten? He goes, yeah. Oh, I said, okay, now I know who you're talking about. And he said, I've been trying to get them to come to South Africa for a long time, but I don't know how to reach them. I said, well, I speak German, so if you want, I'll try to reach them. So I reached out to Euch, I reached out to Melanie, and also reached out to the agent, and I got a response back, and they said, yeah. So long story short, in 2022, assuming this Corona thing, goes away to some degree, Nicklin will be touring South Africa.
Wow, that's very cool, I think. You are really happy in South Africa if they manage this.
Well, I hope so too. It's and I think it will be. The plan is for a 10 performance tour, and there might be a possibility to also go to Namibia because people also speak German there. So South Africa. I don't know if you're aware of this. A lot of my audience know this, but South Africa has a strong German from the European standpoint, a strong German background with about 40% of the DNA from all Afrikaners actually being from ethnic Germans who arrived there. There's about probably 450,000 people in South Africa who still speak German to this day. I've actually met them and spoken German with them.
Very cool. I think that's very cool.
So let's shift a little bit and talk about why I asked you to come on the program. Zurich is an amazing place. It's a beautiful place right there, a beautiful lake. Of course, other things other than chocolate and yodeling, people think of Switzerland for banking. But of course, we could talk about that a little bit. But you've got some pretty cool stuff to see in Zurich. I mean, you've got some amazing museums. I think you've got a clock museum there, if I'm not mistaken, and the Swiss National Museum. Can you tell us a little bit about some of these places that people might want to visit if they actually get a chance to get to Zurich?
Well, there's a lot of great views in Zurich. That's what I actually show on my social media with all my pictures about Zurich. Of course, arts, all the other museums. We have an amazing zoo, actually one of the best zoos in Europe, and it's still growing too. People come here for business too. We are the financial capital of Switzerland. We are the economic capital of Switzerland. So you can do all kinds of things, and depending on which season you travel, either in winter you travel about 1 hour from Zurich and you're on the most beautiful mountains for skiing, or you come in the summer and then you can swim in the lake, in the rivers. You can do so much here for all of the seasons that we have.
Okay, now I'm going to call you on that one, Manuela. You said you can swim in the lakes. I've been in the Alpine lakes in Switzerland. I don't know about swimming there. Maybe in Lugano. Maybe if you go south of Lugano. But in Zurich and the Bodensee, I've dipped my toe in the water at Insel Mainau, which is in Germany. I'm not swimming there. That's too cold.
No, actually, that's the great thing in summer because it gets so hot in the city, then we can swim in the lake and in the rivers. So that's really refreshing and really great. So we do enjoy that a lot.
Well, you talked about some of these things here, but the Swiss National Museum is also in Zurich, and that is that like kind of like the Smithsonian of Switzerland, the main museum where cultural heritage and history are located?
Yeah, more or less. There's from all the regions of Switzerland, they have exhibitions there. They're very actual to what's going on. Also, all the stuff that, we're talking about and actual discussions. So they really do a great job, and they just expanded that museum. So it's an amazing place to go and visit.
Now, I've got to be honest, because obviously, oops, we lost your camera. I think your phone timed out. If you touch the screen. There we go. That's one hazard of using a mobile when you do this, but at least we don't have the background noise. So, one thing that I found interesting, of course, when I prepare for a conversation with someone, I also take a look and just make sure that my facts are up to date and I don't make mistakes. But one of the things I looked at for Zurich, and I didn't realize this when I visited there because I've been to Zurich probably 50 times easily. I didn't know this, but maybe it wasn't there in the past, but Zurich apparently has a Native American museum. I found that fascinating. What's that all about? It's not the first place I think of when I think of Cherokees and Apaches.
No, actually, it's my shame. I have to say I haven't been there for a long time. I was there when my children were small, but I haven't been there for a long time. But it's also really a great museum also for children. So we have so many different museums. You can really almost see everything here in Zurich. And the cultural side of Zurich is really, really open. So very cool here.
Well, I have to say, a lot of people oftentimes who don't know Germans, not Swiss, but Germans, not to confuse German-speaking Swiss with Germans. They're different people. But a lot of people say about Germans, they're very unfriendly. They're very cold. And I don't think that's true, having spent a fair portion of my life in Germany. But you're laughing because you've probably experienced that or seen that yourself. But I would say that if people think that of Germans, I don't think that of all the Swiss. I do when I meet Swiss nationals in Switzerland. Most people are very professional and focused on what they're doing. But my experience in Zurich is that people are very friendly. I had some great interactions with people in Zurich, and not just in a Starbucks.
I'm really glad you say that. There's always it's always this challenge between the Germans and the Swiss, and some of us say that the Germans are arrogant, and the Germans say that Swiss are so quiet and they don't come out of themselves. And so, I think that's wherever you are, when you have country neighbors, there's always something in between everywhere. It's probably the same in the US and Canadians, and wherever you are, that's normal. And it's also kind of funny, I think.
Oh, absolutely. From a cultural standpoint, I find it very entertaining. It's even in the States, we have strange things like that. So we're one country where we have this one language, and still we have this between states, like cantons, but between the states, we have these rivalries. So for instance, I went to high school and university in Ohio. And in Ohio, our neighboring state is West Virginia, which Ohioans look kind of down their nose like they're backwards and country bumpkins and not very advanced in life and illiterate and that sort of thing. And like maybe they marry their cousins and that sort of thing. So that's kind of how people in Ohio look on people in West Virginia. And so the one thing they say about West Virginia is, of course, we spell these reading with a W, writing with a W, but people always say in English, we learn reading, writing, and then it's for West Virginia. Say the only three things they know in West Virginia is reading, writing, and Route 33. Route 33 is the highway that comes from West Virginia to Ohio, so they can escape from West Virginia. So those cultural things are everywhere. It's pretty fascinating.
Very true. That's very true, and it's really funny too. I mean, Switzerland is such a small country, and we speak actually 5 languages, like German, French, Italian, Romanian, and then, of course, almost everybody speaks English here. But it's always funny when we call to Geneva or so, then we speak German, and the people in Geneva answer in French. So they write us mails in French, and we answer in German. And just because, they should speak German, they think we should speak French. So that's always very funny conversations.
Absolutely. It's I lived in Italy for a while. I was stationed there in Vicenza, and so I would go to Sud Tirol quite a bit, to Bozen, or as the Italians say, Bolzano. And so I would go up there, and of course, speaking German, I could go all over Bozen. It's predominantly a German-speaking town, but the market vendors who sell vegetables and fruits are almost all Italian speakers because they come from a little further south in the province where they grow those things. So they come to Bozen to sell them on the weekend. I go up there on Saturday. I used to have a subscription, an abonnement to the newspaper there, the Dolomiten, which would come to my house in Italy. The Italian-speaking, it was delivered every day, from Italy, a German language newspaper. But I go up on the weekends up there, and I go to the marketplace, and I would ask for things in German. They would answer me in Italian, just like what you're talking about in Geneva. So, I mean, I didn't speak Italian well, but I understood enough, and they understood enough German. So it wasn't because we were stubborn; it's because it worked.
Very true. And when you realize that somebody doesn't speak your language properly, then you try to switch in their language. But if it's a language that you don't understand, the Swiss are really funny. Then they pretend they just don't understand it.
Yes, they do. They do.
So a lot of people, we have a lot of expats here in Zurich. Yeah. And many of them, because they all follow me on my social media, and they always tell me like, what's wrong with these Swiss people? And I'm like, they just want to speak our Swiss German. That's when they're happy. So
well, I do speak German, but I don't speak Swiss German unless I've had a few beers, and then I'm like, hooda. It's a little bit different sounding, a little bit higher than I'm accustomed. But, I do pretty well understanding. But, I mean, of course, if people want to lose me in Swiss German, the different cantons, they can by switching into their dialect. And I'm like, huh?
Yeah, I mean, there's even some dialects in Switzerland that even I don't understand properly. So it's really funny.
No, it is. But you mentioned, and I was going to get to this, but Zurich, of course, not simply because of the large banking presence, that's a big part of it, but also it's long been an international city of sorts with a significant portion of its population. I don't know the exact figure, but I would guess that's at around 20 or 25% of your residents are actually foreign nationals, and it's very cosmopolitan in that respect.
Yeah, that's very true. I think it's over 30%, I think it's international here.
Wow.
I think it is because it's all the big companies are settled here in Zurich. So we have all these people from everywhere in the world, and they're just here for a few years and then they go back or switch the country, whatever.
One of my viewers who is born in the Congo to a Swiss French speaker and a Belgique, but grew up in the Congo and then fled when it all, at that time she was a small child, about 6 or 7 years old. They fled and escaped as refugees, wound up living later in South Africa. And she said that my first hour in Zurich, I said to my mom that I can't recognize the German they speak, but I can't understand it. What's this? She said, I'm confused. She said, I recognize her speaking German, but I can't understand it. She said, I started understanding Swiss German within a day. Yeah, well, you were 6. 6-year-olds can understand languages that quickly. The rest of us have to work at it. It's not easy.
Very true. That's the way.
Yeah. So, with this large international presence, it does make for very much a cosmopolitan city in some respects. And I think that surprises people that don't know much about Zurich to find out that it has a very large, probably a larger than London or Paris international population percentage-wise. And it has an impact. You have a wide variety of incredible restaurants in Zurich, don't you?
Yeah, we have a lot of amazing restaurants here. We have a lot of gourmet restaurants here. And like I always say, and we used to have that for the Zurich tourism thingy that one day, like it was called Little Big City. And for me, it's really true because, to reach from one end to the other end, that goes so fast. But still, you have everything in Zurich, and that's so great. And plus, on top, and I think that makes Zurich number one in Switzerland, we have the international airport. And of course, we are a great hub for Europe. So people fly over from the States, from wherever, from Asia, and they just stop over in Zurich, and then that's where they go on with their flights. So that's why a lot of people know Zurich, but just a little bit, because they maybe have been here overnight once or for a day, but no one or not a lot of people actually come here for vacation.
Well, you touched on something I was going to get to, so let's just get to it right now, and that's you talk about the international airlines. When people think of connections between Asia and Africa, in particular in the Middle, not so much the Middle East anymore because Emirates and Etihad, all those airlines are doing these now, but before the springing of those airlines in the last 20 years or so, but people think of airports in Europe as the way station, the transit point to get to Africa, to Asia, and in the past, the Middle East. So you think of Heathrow in London, you think of Schiphol in the Netherlands, and a lot of people think of Paris too because of the Francophone part of Africa. But not a lot of people realize that Switzerland is also one of those major hubs for flights. Berlin is not even important when it comes to this compared to what Zurich is. And that's the reason, as I mentioned earlier, why Air Tunis, I flew to Zurich, got to stay overnight because of the timing of the flight. Pretty nice. But a lot of people, as you say, transit through there. That's a major airport. A lot of airlines fly through Zurich, connecting people all over the world. And then you've also got the aspect of you do have United Nations in Geneva, and so a lot of people come through Switzerland because of the United Nations as well.
Very true. That's right.
So let me ask this question. We're talking about Zurich, but let me ask this. Have you had much opportunity to travel the world? Have you traveled Europe or been anywhere interesting or exciting? Have you ever been to Africa?
Of course. I've been to Durban, South Africa.
No way.
Before I joined the city of Zurich almost 17 years ago, I used to be a flight attendant for Swiss International Airlines. So I traveled all over the places too. And I've seen a lot from the world. The only continent that's missing in my travel journey is Australia. But as soon as traveling is possible again, Australia is on my top list then.
Well, I suspect that the next time you and I will be able to travel to Australia, we'll be in wheelchairs, so it might be a long wait.
No way. I do that before.
Well, things are a little crazy in Australia right now. We won't get into that. But, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually been to Australia, but just to the airport in Sydney on my way to New Zealand. I looked out the window of the glass and saw Sydney and like, oh, I wish I could stay, but I've got to get on my plane and go on. But wow, so you've been to Durban. Wow, what took you to South Africa? Was it working in the airline industry?
We have friends over there actually who live in Durban. They have a bed and breakfast, so we stayed there. But that's quite a while ago. My children were still small by then.
Okay. Well, in fact, my viewer who is grew up in the Congo and actually lives right outside Durban right now. So she right on the beach. She likes the beach. Apparently, I'm not a beach person. So
I'm a girl, absolutely. So that's why I have to travel so much, because I miss the beaches here in Switzerland.
well, you mentioned Swiss International Airlines. We're talking about the previous iteration of Swiss Air, which now is owned by Lufthansa, but it was an independent company before its executives decided to invest in a bunch of airlines that were unfortunately failing. We won't get into that, but that airline was, I thought, one of the best airlines in the world. Every flight I ever had with that Swiss Air was an absolute pleasure. It was nothing but joy. I never had a bad experience, and that's impossible to say with any airline. I like Lufthansa, but I've had a few bad experiences, but never had a bad experience. And Zurich was so welcoming in that airport. Every time I went to my gate, there was newspapers and magazines and coffee machines there for everybody, not just for the rich people and the exclusive club members. It was for everybody. Now, that's not why the airline got in financial trouble. They got in financial trouble because they thought they were too small and they tried to become a major player, and it didn't work out. But you worked for an airline, which I have to compliment you, was an absolute gem of an airline.
Well, I used to work for Crossair actually shortly before the grounding. And then we came together and we got Swiss International Airlines by Lufthansa, unfortunately. And yeah, still a lot of people, and even me, we're still suffering because of this grounding. This is just something that should have never, ever have happened. We're still so sad about this.
Yeah, and okay, just because we've kind of alluded to it, just for the audience's sake, not everyone knows this. That airline, which was profitable, was concerned that with the European Union becoming a more integrated thing, because Switzerland wasn't part of the European Union, they're part of the European Free Trade Area, I think they were, but they weren't part of the European Union. They were concerned that they might be aced out of or lose routes and lose volume because they weren't a big enough player. So they bought stakes in LOT, I think it was LOT, in Portugal Airlines, and also in the Italian carrier Alitalia, all of which were losing money. And I guess they had hoped they could turn them around, but in the end, it just cost them a great deal, and they wound up grounding the airline. Very, very embarrassing for the executives of that airline, and very disappointing for those of us who were their customers. But then Lufthansa brought them back, and it's I'm not trying to speak ill of the airline. It's not the same. It had a very different feel back then.
Of course, it's not the same anymore. Of course, my daughter is flying for Swiss International Airlines now for 12 years. And yeah, I know from her stories, and we discuss about it, and flying is great. I still love flying, but it's not the same anymore.
Well, it's interesting. It isn't the same anymore, but it isn't. So you are working in the office of the mayor there, and you obviously deal a lot with tourism and trying to get people to come to the city and promote the city, which is awesome. And that's how I know you, from LinkedIn. But you worked in aviation, and that's kind of a hospitality industry of some respects. So maybe you're well suited. I imagine that in your former affectation, what you used to do, you probably dealt with a few angry customers and unruly customers, and you probably had a few challenges. Just a moment, we got a super chat, and I want to ask you a question. But Lori, who's from Finland, Lori Lettinen says, a huge fan of direct democracy and fine clocks here. Oh, okay, fine clocks. Okay. Greetings to Manuela from Finland. I believe both have now chosen F-35A after the F-18C. Okay, Lori, I guess you've chosen the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter for your Air Force. I didn't know that. We could talk about the Swiss military later on, so let me ask you this question. Can you tell us anecdotally, maybe a story, before I do that, sorry, one more thing. Folks, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba African channel, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. It is the 10th of December, man, Christmas. Oh, I didn't change this. It's only 15 days away. I'm falling behind here. So let's change this to 15. Just 15 days of Christmas now. So I've changed that. My audience can't see that, but I don't think they can hear me. But anyway, so 15 days of Christmas. So you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa. Anyway, so Manuela, can you give us an anecdotal story without disclosing the culprits' names, because we don't care and you probably don't remember, of maybe one of the more challenging experiences you had working in the airline industry? Anything that might interest the audience?
Well, I think it's the same stories that still happen with unruly passengers. Or I had once a really, really drunk passenger on the flight to Göteborg. And then that was just crazy. So I told the pilot, so when we arrived, the police was there. This guy got arrested and he got on the blacklist. He was never allowed to fly with us anymore then. But usually I have more great experiences than bad experience, actually.
Well, that would be my expectation. Most people are fine. They're good passengers, and they're just trying to get from one place to another. And at least back in the day when I was much younger, I enjoyed flying. I'm tall, and I don't enjoy it now because it keeps sticking extra rows of seats in there and taking my leg room away. But so the joy of flying disappeared for me about 15 years ago. But a lot of people just want to have a good experience and get where they're going. And so I imagine most people are pretty good. But I mean, everyone's got that story. So now here's the question: Was the unruly drunk a Swede or a Swiss national, or what was he?
Was not a Swiss. I was probably a Scandinavian, but that's quite a long time ago. And he was just a bad guy, and he just drank too much. And the bad thing is that ground staff didn't realize. I mean, if ground staff realizes somebody drunk, they should take them out and not let them go on a plane, because once you're up in the air, you can't throw this guy out anymore. So that's really bad then. You have it.
Well, Manuel, I'll have to take exception to that. I served in the Army for 36 and a half years. And in fact, we do throw people out of planes with parachutes.
All right, I got it.
Okay, but not at 38,000 feet.
Right.
If you'll indulge me on my program, I don't usually do it when I have a guest on, but since you're in the Schweiz, and people think of Switzerland mountains and snow, and which naturally leads to thinking of Christmas for those in the Northern Hemisphere. South Africans get sunny Christmas, which is a weird thing for us. But I have my Advents calendar. If you don't mind, I'm going to open up today's date while we do this. So today is the 10th. Let me find the 10th. This one's hard to find. I usually get a better one, but this year they were sold out, so I had to get this second-rate Advents calendar. So I'm trying to find the 10 on here, and I can't. Oh, there. No, that's 16. So 20, 23. Where is the 10 at? Mike, this is embarrassing. I cannot find the 10. There's 11, 12. My goodness. You know what? This looks like it's going to be mission failure here. I can't find the 10. There's 14. You know what? I'm going to look at this while you're talking about something. I'll ask you a question, then I'll take myself off camera, and I'll look for the 10. That's very embarrassing. Where's the 10 at? There's no 10 on here. Anyway, let me ask you about this. What's Christmas like in Zurich? I mean, I can imagine it's got to be awesome. Music playing in the streets, probably wreaths up and decorations, a little chill in the air, maybe some snow. What's a Christmas in Zurich like normally?
Well, today it really snowed like crazy, and the city was really nicely white covered. We have a lot of great Christmas light decorations here. We have some Christmas market, and for us, it's the mulled wine is very popular. So people like to go there to the Christmas markets after work and have a few mulled wines, and that's what we do. And then for the Christmas days, it's all family time then. It's actually more or less, it's quiet in the city because everyone is at home and celebrating Christmas at home.
Okay, hold on a second. I thought I heard you say wine. Did you say wine?
Yeah, mulled wine.
Milk wine.
Glühwein.
Glühwein. Glühwein. No, that's not milk wine. I never heard it called milk wine before. No, Glühwein. Even Americans say Glühwein. They just pronounce it incorrectly.
Great.
So the first time I ever had Glühwein, okay, for those of you under the age of 30, you can turn off the volume now. But the first time I had Glühwein was at Fasching in 1980. It must have been 85. Was it 80? No, it was 84. Anyway, at the Fasching. And we were out running around in Fasching, which is Mardi Gras for those trying to figure out what Fasching is. German is Fasching. Anyway, so I was out at Fasching, and it was cold. It was so cold. And they're like, here, drink this. You'll get warm. I was like, well, okay. It was very warm. I held it in my hand. I drank. I'm like, whoa, yeah, that's warm, all right. Glühwein. Okay, so Glühwein. That makes sense. By the way, I found the miscreant. I found the miscreant 10 on my Adventskalender. It's hiding at the bottom, right down here. So we're going to open it up. And as I said, this is not the best quality, so it's hard to get. All the chocolates are the same. Usually I get a different treat, but this year they're all the same chocolate every day. It's boring. So it says, put a string of lights indoors. Well, gee, that's very exciting. Thanks for that. Anyway, so Merry Christmas to everyone. Frohes Fest. Frohe Weihnachten. So your family, obviously German speakers. That's your first language. Did you grow up with another language? What was the second language? Was it French or what?
No, I grew up with speaking Swiss German, of course, but my children grew up with also speaking English because my ex-husband and I, we ran a restaurant and a hotel here in Zurich. So we had au pair girls from Canada, from Scandinavia. So my children grew up with English and German.
No, but you as a small child, did you learn a second language back then, or did you have to learn them as an adult?
Only at school, and then after school, like when I went to Canada. I was in Canada for half a year to learn English, actually.
Whereabouts in Canada?
I stayed on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo.
Oh.
And I went to school in San Francisco.
Wow. Well, San Francisco at that time was probably a beautiful place. I've been to San Francisco many times and been there recently. It's not so lovely anymore, but it was lovely back then. But Vancouver is still a lovely place. Vancouver Island is amazing. So were you in Victoria or?
I was also, but I stayed in Nanaimo actually.
Oh, okay. You did say that. Okay.
Island, and then I went to San Francisco for a month, and then I went back home after half a year.
Well, you obviously are not afraid of seeing the world. You obviously enjoy traveling. That's one of my favorite activities.
I love, like 5 years ago now, I took a backpack and I traveled to Middle and South America for 2 months. So I was traveling all by myself, 8 weeks through 5 countries, and I totally enjoyed it.
There's this lady who's from the Netherlands, and she goes by the name Itchy Boots, and she has a program on YouTube. She buys a motorcycle. I guess she used to be in the mining industry, and she must be wealthy or something now. But she went. She looks like she's in her 30s, but she buys a motorcycle, and she goes to a region, and she travels all over, and she records it and loads up these videos every day of her travels. She's called Itchy Boots. Very adventuresome. But I was just thinking, if you're backpacking, I've done the backpacking thing as well, but I've done it in Eastern Europe and in Transylvania and places like that. But if you're doing the backpacking thing as a lady by yourself, that's pretty adventurous. I mean, a lady with a motorcycle, at least you can get away if there's trouble. You're gone.
So, the good thing is that usually trips, the way I did 5 years ago, you usually do when you're 18 or 20.
Yep.
So when I was 52 years old. So then, you're a strong woman, then you know how you have to help yourself. So it was no problem at all at any time.
Okay. So you're saying you know how to deal with the troublemakers when you get to a certain age.
Oh, the thing is that I really like Latinos. I think Latino guys are really beautiful. So, but I'm glad I went there at 52 and not at 20 years old. I would have been in trouble when I was 20, probably.
You got to be careful with my audience. Some of these guys think they're on Tinder sometimes. They'll start trying to chat up my guests. So be careful over there. Don't need that happening. Well, that's interesting. For Latin America, I've only been to the Caribbean Basin and Mexico. I've never been below that. I would like to go to Argentina, Patagonia, and Chile sometime, but that's down the road somewhere. But other than that, I've kind of been all over the world myself. I really love enjoying traveling. Of course, my first traveling was when I first went to Germany as a young man, stationed there in the Army, and I traveled all over, and the dollar was very strong, very strong. And my first trip to Switzerland, actually, I entered Liechtenstein first. My friend and I were in his Volvo station wagon that he purchased with his bonus for enlistment. And we got to the border, and the Swiss, of course, maintain the customs and immigration for Liechtenstein. And it was summertime, and it was a long, we were coming through, what's that? It's Vorarlberg. Vorarlberg is the province there. We came through Vorarlberg, and then we turned and came down to go into Switzerland, or into Liechtenstein, and the Swiss are out there, and they were looking for drugs and things like that. And they had cars open and trunks open and people. And they finally got to us, and we were just there for like an hour. We finally got through. We got into Liechtenstein. We went up to Malbun, up in the mountains there. It was absolutely beautiful. For me, it was very special because I remember Hani Wenzel, and it was Hani and I can't remember her brother's name, but the two Liechtenstein skiers who were medalists in the Winter Olympics. And so that was kind of special for me because that's where they used to practice. That was in Malbun. So we went up there. The dollar was really strong. It was like 2,668 to the dollar Swiss francs at the time. And that was pretty good. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was pretty good for us. We had a good time. It's dirt cheap for us because I didn't have much money. I was just a young soldier. But we went from there and then went to we went around the bottom of below Bodensee and then through some lakes in the mountains there, and we wound up in Zurich. And that was my first time ever getting to Zurich. It was pretty cool. And we went to Lucerne as well. So it was a very interesting time. And what I remember seeing, and this is someone talked about the F-35 earlier. What I remember seeing is Switzerland's a very interesting place. It's maintained its independence for centuries. In fact, during the Second World War, when Allies and Axis powers overflew Swiss airspace, they would shoot them down or force them to the ground. The Swiss Air Force did. They, in fact, forced down a number, and they would intern the pilots until they were repatriated as prisoners. But Switzerland has always defended itself quite well. And one of my first observations back then was that driving around, I saw a lot of Swiss military. It was a weekend, so they were drilling. And I saw fighter planes that were on airfields and remote locations. And I realized that Switzerland is a very well-defended and serious country. But interesting about Switzerland is a few times the country has had referendums to eliminate the military. There's no need for the military. And each time that the population has voted to retain it, at least for now. So I think it's an interesting thing about Switzerland. I guess the bottom line here is don't mess with the Swiss.
That's a good idea. That's said really great. Really good.
But hey, let's excuse me. Let's talk about the banking sector. Zurich is famous for the banking center. All the big names are there. You've got UBS, you've got Credit Suisse, you've got Swiss Re, you've got all these major, and some insurance firms too. But it's a major financial center. I would imagine that brings you a lot of international traffic in there, a lot of trade, and certainly it's got to be good for the tax base and also for keeping the city up in good shape, the infrastructure.
It sure does. And a lot of rich people have their accounts over here. And once in a while, there is some negative things about all of it, because then they find out some transactions, some stuff, and then everything is written badly. And then again, they say we are one of the best finance places in the world. So it's like everywhere. It's up and down and good and bad, just like the flow goes.
No, but seriously, when I think about Zurich, my first thought is always banking and financial sector. And interesting enough, when I think of London, I also think the same thing because of Canary Wharf and the massive flow of finances go through London. Maybe I think about money too much. I don't know. Well, apparently I'm not one of those rich people because I don't have an account in Zurich. I might have to fix that one day.
It's so bad for you, Chris.
Actually, I've been in UBS and in Credit Suisse and inquired about a bank account in person when I was in Zurich in the past. Not because I'm hiding Nazi gold or something like that, but just because I was curious. No, it's interesting for me, Manuela, too, is that you have what I would say are very pleasant summers in Zurich. They're very nice. It's not overly warm. It's not cold. It's almost ideal, and it seems like that all summer. And the winters, although it can get cold, I've been there in the winter. It's not like the Arctic. It's pleasant as far as winter goes. Would you agree, or do you think I'm crazy?
Oh yeah, I agree. It's finally we have some snow again, like last winter and this winter. But before we had a lot of winters without snow in the. Here in the city. Of course, they had the snow in the mountains. They always have the snow in the mountains. But we had years where they didn't have enough snow for the season. But now, lately, we are really having lots of snow again, even here down in the city. So, and the last summer now was really a bad one. We had rain for 3 months. Ooh. So now, imagine what the people here felt like. They were all miserable because of the weather. So that was quite tough. But usually summer is really great here too.
So let's see. It rained all summer and they were miserable. Sounds like they're Germans.
No, they can also be Swiss.
No, I was just having a little fun with it. I always tell people they're always curious. How come the Germans always invade France? I said, well, it's because they're trying to get to the beaches. They're tired of the rain. That's what it is.
Yeah, but same, when we think of, where could we go on vacation? Then we think about islands, and then we're like, oh no, there are too many Germans. We don't want to go there.
And my German subscriber base just dropped to 0 for this channel. Ja, na, also wir machen nur Witzen. Ja, bleib noch bei uns. Bitte, bitte, bitte. Yeah. So, yeah, no, sorry, I couldn't resist. I have a little fun with the Germans. The weather is one thing, but what about traffic? I mean, I've driven into Zurich and it wasn't too bad, but I haven't been in the town for a while now. Is traffic a problem? Is that a challenge, or what's the best way? Should you stay on the edge of town if you go to Zurich, if you're driving, and then take the train? And what's the right approach for a tourist coming to Zurich?
I would always go for public transportation. I do the same all over the world. And if you come in here with the car, all the car drivers hate it because our city wants to become very cool for bicycles and bike drivers. So there's always some problems with the ones and the others, but I really suggest to travel by public transportation.
Well, I can attest that on my visits, when I've taken public transportation, it's been reliable, it's been on time, and it's been, well, given what transportation costs, reasonable. I'd say it's not free, but it's also not going to cost me a kidney or a liver to auction that off to pay for it. But I would say that the public transport has been very good, particularly the train system in and out of Zurich. It's really, really good, especially coming from the airport, but not just from there. So you've got in Zurich some markets. We talked now. You talked about a Christmas market. So is it a Christkindl market? Do you have that? And is it ongoing right now? And when does it wrap up?
It all stops on the 23rd and some on the 24th by noon. Because here we have our first Christmas day is on the 24th in the evening it starts. So that's usually when all the shops more or less start closing around noon or by 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
So these Christkindl marks are, let me ask this question, because I mean, it's the age of Rona. There's some really odd things going on in the world epidemiologically right now. And in Germany, it's been a bit of a challenge. They've shut down a number of Christkindl marks and people haven't been able to go to them, which has frustrated people. And they've got the reasons for doing it. But are the markets they're open now? Can people go to them? And what are I mean, do you have to stand 5 meters from the next person at the booth, or can you just operate normally in the Christkindl market in Zurich this year?
By now you can still go. You have to show a certificate. You either have to be vaccinated, recovered, or tested. But just now, just a couple of hours ago, the Federal Council had a press conference, and they said to all the cantons, they have to give feedback until Tuesday. Either they start doing the 2G, that means either you're vaccinated or recovered, no more testing, that doesn't work anymore, or they want to do a lockdown for a partial lockdown until Christmas. Because we are having increasing numbers of infections and our hospitals are really, really busy, and they are totally afraid that by Christmas, there's no more place in the hospitals for emergencies.
Oh, that's disheartening news to hear. So the federal authorities are contemplating that now. So that leads me to the next question, Manuela, and this is an obvious one, I'm sure, but just if you could tell us a little bit about it. With Zurich being such an important tourist destination in normal times, the past couple of years, I would imagine, have likely had a devastating impact on your economy, for restaurants, for hotels, pensions, for people who sell postcards and things like that. It's had to be difficult. Has that been the case, in fact, in Zurich?
Yeah, it is. Really, the international people are really missing here because we are here in Zurich. We are more for business travel, or people, they just come from all over the places in the world, maybe stay here a day or a night, and then they travel on to all the destinations that they book. So we have been really, really missing all these. Swiss people discovered how beautiful Switzerland is. So Swiss people came to hotels in Zurich, like the city people went to the mountain sites. So it's really Swiss people traveled in Switzerland. But of course, it's not enough. It's not the same as when international travelers are coming to Zurich and Switzerland.
Well, and I think that's an important point to make for folks when you think about tourism. You can rely on internal domestic tourism to some degree, but that foreign income that comes in is important. But it's not just that. I mean, my experience is that, because I've traveled everywhere, as you have, and what I like about tourist destinations, I mean, I don't really necessarily like tourist destinations, if you know what I mean. Going to Venice with a bunch of tourists is not my idea of a great time, but Venice itself is great. But there are times that international tourists give a place a flavor, because they bring their own flamboyant or unusual or reserved behavior. And I think that with that missing, you notice it. You notice if there aren't Brits or Germans or Dutch or Americans or Brazilians hanging around. It's pretty obvious when you're so accustomed to seeing it. And I suspect that kind of is a little disappointing too, not just the money missing.
Yeah, I think so too. But you know what? It was also now the chance to go and travel anywhere, because the mass of tourists wasn't there. So I have a lot of friends who traveled to Venice, to Paris, to everywhere, and they said, wow, it was so great. There was so much space. Everyone was so friendly because they were so happy that they were tourists, actually. So, and even here in Switzerland, as you have been to Jungfrau Joch, top of Europe, yep. I have been there last summer, I think. And I thought it's amazing. And there was only a third of the usual people over there a day. So I thought it's still packed, but it's very pleasant. And I couldn't imagine that there would be another 5,000 or 6,000 people there at the same time. So there was really now is the chance to go and travel to closer destinations, because now there's space and now you have time to do that.
Well, and, kind of perversely, for a natural environment, something like you mentioned, the Jungfrau, and like the Grand Canyon here in America, without the hordes of tourists around, it's taking in the natural beauty and the silence and the nature and hearing birds and hearing wildlife and seeing things without tourist buses and without people there is kind of nice, actually. I mean, it's artificial, but it's kind of nice. So I suppose that I understand where you're coming from. I appreciate that. It definitely makes it different. I know that just to give you a comparison, I had returned to America from Tunisia, where I was stationed, and it was September 11th, 2002, 1-year anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Let me tell you something. When I flew from Norfolk, Virginia back to Baltimore, I was the only person in the airport. There was nobody there. There were like 3 people on the flight with me. Nobody wanted to fly on September 11th a year later. And it was a very weird and strange feeling walking through an airport where there was nobody there, and then getting on a plane where the flight attendants outnumbered the passengers and were very attentive to us. It was quite a different sort of situation when you're just so accustomed to seeing so many people around.
Very true.
So let me ask you this question. How in the world did you wind up working for the mayor? I mean, we haven't talked about politics. I don't want to get into politics. It's not the conversation. But it sounds like an interesting job that you have there. You get to promote the city, and you get to do what I think you love. You seem very, very much attuned to do this sort of thing. How did that come about? Did you know somebody, or did they come seeking you? How did you wind up doing this? Because you've been doing it for a little while.
Yes, I'm here for almost 17 years. And my last job was being a flight attendant. So actually, I knew I was going to stop being a flight attendant because my 2 elder children, they were in really nice puberty state. That was really tough. So I thought I need a job where I can be home every night. So I knew actually one of the bosses here, one of the directors, and he hired me as his assistant. So that's how my career started here with the city of Zurich a long time ago.
A long time ago. And you're still at it. So obviously you enjoy it quite a great deal.
Yeah, and because the mayor is going for re-election in February, and I actually promised her to stay with her because we are a dream team for all these years now. And yeah, if she gets reelected, I'm also going to be here with her, and then we'll see what's going to happen.
Well, I have to say this. I first came across you on LinkedIn. That's we're both on LinkedIn, and every one of your posts on LinkedIn are always awesome. They're uplifting. They're exciting. It talks about great things, and it's so nice to be able to hear from someone that's always got good things and nice things to say, because the world isn't always like that. So I want to thank you for that. It's really nice and refreshing to see some really good stuff on LinkedIn. What's your experience on LinkedIn been like? Have you found it to be a useful tool? I find it to be a very useful tool for networking and reaching out to people, and also opportunities to do things. Oh, are you there? I think we might have lost Manuela.
I think it's great. Social media is amazing because you can be connected with so many people all over the world. And I met a lot of people offline, of course, and everyone who is traveling from wherever, the States, whatever, Asia, they always come and visit me either at City Hall or we go for lunch and dinners. And to me, I think I made 95% just great things that are happening to me on social media. And I can't say anything else, but there's always weirdos everywhere. I mean, so many weirdos are on the WW. So I also made experiences like that, but I have a lot of humor. I can really take that.
Yeah, no, that's true. There are definitely a lot of wackos on the WWW. I like the way you said that. That's pretty good. Well, listen, if I get to Zurich, you have to show me one of your favorite restaurants there, and maybe I'll have a good schnitzel and a Hefeweizen to go along with it. Of course, when I drink alcohol, I don't drive, so I'll be taking public transportation.
That's great. I had a vehicle today for lunch, believe it or not.
Did you really? Okay. Okay, at the risk, I don't know if this will put you in trouble in Zurich, but do you have a favorite restaurant or favorite haunt that you go to that you might recommend where people would have a good meal in Zurich?
No, but there's hundreds of restaurants, and I also try to be neutral for everyone and everything. So I like a lot of restaurants. But if you want to have some tips, you can follow me on Instagram, because there I post every restaurant visit and all the things. So you get a lot of tips on my Instagram page.
Excellent. Yeah, no, when I was in Zurich, I went to this very famous Swiss restaurant. It's an odd one. It has an interesting origin. But it's Swiss. I think it's called McDonald's.
I'm not going to McDonald's.
I'm just kidding. I did frequent the Starbucks. I will tell you that. There's one that was right by a bridge crossing there, and I was in there frequently, that Starbucks. Even though I don't like coffee, I drink Frappuccinos for the sugar and the caffeine. I really enjoy those. Oh, there's one thing I want to ask you about the lake there. People, they can go parasailing out there. They can cruise around on the lake. Is that a popular activity in summertime?
Yeah, you can do all kind of sports here. You can do all kind of things, and whatever your heart wishes and whatever your courage needs to be satisfied for, you can do it here, of course.
Now, one more thing about Switzerland that we probably should talk about before we wrap up, and of course, I don't know that Zurich is famous for this, but Switzerland is certainly historically famous for watches, Swiss watches, the quality of Swiss watches. And ironically, the Swiss watch industry was on grievous decline. It almost disappeared entirely. And then surprisingly, Swatch saved the Swiss watch industry in many respects. I don't know how they did it, but it became the thing to do. Everybody bought Swiss watches from Swatch, and suddenly Swiss watches, even expensive ones like Tag Heuer and Paget, came back into vogue, and they all started doing very well again, in no small measure owing to Swatch. But is Zurich known for its watches as well? I mean, I see them in all kinds of stores, but maybe they're just selling them there. I don't know. Do they make watches in Zurich?
Yeah, we have that too. I think you spoke before about the watch museum, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that is Bayer. That's the oldest watch manufacturer and oldest watch store all over the world. It's driven in the 8th generation already. So we have that too. I used to be a very big fan of Swatch. I have about 15 Swatches at home, but they're not so popular anymore because now everybody has Apple Watches and stuff like this. So it kind of, with all these technology changes, it has changed a little bit.
Well, once maybe when I can afford a UBS bank account in Zurich, I could buy myself a Tag Heuer.
I have Rolex. I don't know.
A Rolex, okay, yeah. Rolex are still popular, folks. The thing about Rolex, though, is that they're true to their word. If you have a problem with it, you send it into them, they repair it, and they'll send it back to you. Yep, that's absolutely true. Erica, the lady who from the Congo in South Africa, with the Swiss mother and Belgique father, said that her grandfather was a Swiss watchmaker. Well, there you go. I didn't know that. Well, Manuela, it's been a fascinating conversation, and thank you for your ability to adjust on the fly as we went from your laptop, which was giving us. I don't know if the Chinese were listening into our conversation or what was going on there, but something strange was going on. But thank you for your quick switch from your laptop, your hand to your mobile, because we were clearly able to see you. And hear you clearly. It's a real pleasure, and thank you for coming on. When I coordinated with you, I should let my audience know, when I first wrote to her, I said I'd like to have her on. She wrote back and almost like a German said, "Why?" No. And I said, "Well, because I think you'd be interesting. I think you'd be an interesting guest." She said, "How?" Well, I said, I think people would like to hear about Zurich as a tourist destination. She goes, "Okay, great. I can talk about that." And I said, "See, we could talk. And we could talk for another hour, but I don't want to monopolize your time because it is a Friday evening." But then she said, "I'll be happy to come on." She said, "Yeah, but I'm going on holiday right now. Call me in a month." So I'm like, okay, all right. Is she serious about coming to the program, or is she just stringing me along here? So I waited a month, and actually I got busy and forgot to write back to her, and I wrote back, and she's like, "Yeah, let's do it. How about the 10th? And I'm like, there you go. And here you are. I had no idea that you've been a flight.
Thank you very much for.
Oh, it's my pleasure, but I had no idea that you were a flight attendant. I would have tried to get you on here sooner. I've never had a flight attendant on my program before, so here's the first for Chris Wyatt Africa. But let me do this as we get ready to wrap up. Let me give you an opportunity to share whatever you like with folks, maybe a message of hope about Christmas or something about Zurich or just something about Switzerland. Anything you'd like to share with people that as we wrap up, and because I always give my guests a chance to get a final comment or tell a story, whatever it is they want to do here at the end. So I'll give you a chance to do that. Anything you'd like to share with the audience about Zurich, about Christmas, or maybe a message of hope that we'll all get out of this Rona nonsense at some point. Anything you'd like to share with us, Manuela?
Well, all I can say, as my Instagram account is called, Zurich is beautiful. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I really love this city. I love living here and I love working here. And it's a great place to be. Well, Merry Christmas to everyone.
Oh, can you say that again? Because I cut you off.
Merry Christmas to everyone and a Happy New Year.
Thank you very much. That's because when I speak with your mobile, it cuts off your mic. So my apologies for that. Well, that was very succinct and a great message. Thank you for sharing that with us. Manuela, perhaps we'll get you on the program sometime and we'll talk more about tourism. Maybe things pick up a little bit and how things are going there in Zurich. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you being a guest on the program. And the same to you. Merry Christmas, Frohes Fest, Frohe Weihnachten, and best of luck to you and your family in the coming year and to Zurich. And let's hope that we get out of this so that world can return to some degree of normalcy and people can start traveling again and experience the wonder and beauty that is Zurich.
Yes, let's hope so. All the best to you and all the best to the audience. Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. All right, with that, I'm going to put you in the waiting room. And there you go, folks. There is the assistant to the mayor in Zurich, Switzerland. Manuela Leonhard was my guest today, and I want to thank her profusely for coming on. It was a real pleasure. I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. It's nice to get something a little more interesting that's not focused on politics and elections and all the other things happening in the world. So many, many thanks to Manuela. It was a real pleasure. Okay, folks, I'll be back for Night Owls here in a couple of hours. We'll do a Night Owls on a Lecker Lecker Freitag. So thank you very much for that, and we'll catch you guys. Be sure to come back and hey, smash that like button. Listen, it doesn't cost you any money. We're not e-begging for money for super chats or for membership, but just asking for a like to show your appreciation for the time and effort was put in, and just smash that button right down there. It is kostenlos, as we say in German. It costs you nothing. It is absolutely free. Just a moment of your time is all it takes to smash the like button. So be sure to do that. And with that, folks, I'm going to wrap up the stream, and then I'm going to drop off the camera and give my thanks to Manuela offline. So thank you all so much. Cheers, and see you on the Night Owls edition coming up here shortly at 9:30 Well, I can't do 35. The YouTube is messing with me. But 9:30 South Africa, Botswana, Namibia time, and 14:30, 2:30 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States. That'll be 8:30 in Zurich. Cheers, everybody.